My name is Michael Dardar. I am the Vice Principal Chief of the United Home and Nation. I have seen the cleanup effort in a variety of our communities. I've been down to the end of South Pass, the mouth of the Mississippi. I've been in places like Bay Baptiste. I've been on the beach at Port Fourchon. And what I've seen so far is a very disorganized cleanup effort. I've seen miles of unattended boom. I've seen miles of boom washed up on the bank with no one around. I've seen pockets of oil in the marsh with no one there to clean it up. My question is, how are you going to make this cleanup effort more proactive? How are you going to change the dynamics on the ground and make this effort more effective? Thank you.
I'd say to Michael that the cleanup effort has not been perfect. We have had to respond and allocate resources from Louisiana all the way across to Florida, and we've had to do that sometimes very quickly. There's been gaps in the defenses, and you almost have to think about this as an invasion of oil to make sure that you're ready for it. We've had some devastating pictures, particularly in Louisiana, of the oil that's got into the marshes. The beaches are easier to clean. The marshes particularly are very sensitive. They take a long time. You flush them. We even have crews out there that clean blades of grass, but it's something you have to be very, very careful about. We see boom that gets washed up. If it's out there, the tides come. The storm that we're having actually today with Hurricane Alex has raised high levels of waves all across the Gulf. It's disrupting the booms. We're going to have to go back and replace those booms. We've been working with the Coast Guard, who is really the command center for the spill response, which we work with, where we're going to bring in, go from 500 to 900 skimmers. We have this issue with oil that during the evening it moves, and we think we know where it is in the evening. And often at dawn it's in a different place, sometimes surprises us. We also have aerial overflights that send the coordinates for where the oil is. Those coordinates are then sent to skimmers, and they get out there and they can't find it. Sometimes they can be only 400 yards away. So we're going to up the aerial surveillance of these. We're going to bring in even airships or blimps in parts of the Gulf so they can actually direct the ships. We're learning as we go. It hasn't been perfect, or you wouldn't see sites like that. But the effort has really doubled in the last month.
Is there a system? I mean, you describe getting airships up in the air, but an intelligence system, a network, so that if the direction of the winds and the water change and oil comes to a new spot on that very long coastline, somebody here, somebody in your shop finds out about it in good time.
So there's a nerve center, a command center. It's called the Unified Command, of which it's really commanded by the Coast Guard, where BP employees are there as well. There's representatives of NOAA and government agencies in Robert, Louisiana. It was just recently moved to downtown New Orleans. There's command centers in Houma and in Mobile, Alabama. And then there's what we're now transitioning to are forward operating bases using the military terminology that will now be in each of the parishes and in Mississippi, Alabama, and Louisiana. And we're setting up this week an air center out of Tyndall Air Force Base in Florida to be able to put that sort of real-time oversight to improve what we've been doing. There's a lot of it that has been captured, skimmed, burned, collected, but it's these stringers of oil, the ones like you saw in Louisiana there, that are so devastating. This oil spill is not like a giant pool of oil. It tends to break up anywhere between 10 yards wide and 1,000 yards long to 50 yards wide and 1,000 yards long, and then they come in, they slip through the defenses, and they plow into a beach. So worse, they get into the back bays, and those are the ones that now we're redoubling efforts to try to prevent.
After your boss, Tony Hayward, testified to Congress, it was announced that you were now in charge of the response by BP. What's changed? There's this new entity called the Gulf Coast Restoration Organization. Do you still report to Tony Hayward? Who do you work for?
Well, I'm on the board of BP, and I do report to Tony Hayward, CEO of BP. The original intent was to set this organization up after the time that the well was killed, and then we would set up a long-term restoration organization. What's changed is after the meeting at the White House, where we agreed that we would set up the escrow fund, put the assets aside, begin to manage the claims process over to the independent claims expert, Ken Feinberg, Those activities required a lot of attention. And if anything, everyone should read it as this organization is a signal to America, the long-term intent of BP to make sure it meets its commitments for many years. It will put a lot of attention on making sure that we get the resources into the Unified Command with the Coast Guard. That Unified Command is directed by the Coast Guard. We have people there, and we're of course paying for that activity. And this should be give people comfort that this is not a temporary activity for BP.
Well, you talk about the relationship with the federal government. Who tells who what to do? Do you tell them what you're doing, or do you ask them what ought to be done next?
So we make a series of recommendations, whether it's on the subsea or working with the booms and the spill response. The subsea is obviously an area where BP has a lot of expertise. However, Secretary Chu of the Department of Energy, Secretary Salazar from the Interior, Lisa Jackson, the National Labs, Los Alamos, Lawrence Livermore, and others are all here in Houston and review every decision. We have a whole series of engineering options. We review them in great detail, and only after we have sort of agreement and their approval do we go forward with significant activities on the subsea. On the spill response, this is actually not a spill, it's a leak, it's an ongoing leak. So we're plowing new ground all the time here, and this is what's going to change the way the world looks at these leaks and spills in terms of response. But the Coast Guard does have a lot of experience in the logistics work and the movement of equipment and materials, and that combined with BP, I think it's not perfect, but it's a good cooperation and combination of skills. They do make the decisions on where we allocate the resources.